Annual review. Pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Michelle.
Jeremy McCarty,
Here.
Bernie Paparad.
Here.
Roseanne Bozak.
Here.
Travis Dunlap,
Present.
Nick Loving,
Here.
Nicole Migalorni,
Here.
Aaron Addick.
Clay, before we do like the approval of minutes, do you think that we should move forward and do his swearing in?
I have technically, I guess, already sworn him in. He
Okay.
signed the oath, or I forget what the document's title, what is the title there?
Oath of office.
Oath of office. He signed it, I signed it, and he kept a copy, and I gave one to Michelle to give to Jane, so he is official.
Outstanding. Approval of minutes, August 1st, 2022.
I'd like to make a motion to approve. Second.
Okay, motion second, discussion. Roll call, Michelle.
Bernie Paparad,
Yes.
Roseanne Bozak,
Yes.
Travis Dunlap,
Yes.
Nicole Migalorni,
Yes.
Nick Loving,
Yes.
Aaron Haddock.
Yes.
Jeremy McCarty.
Yes. Communication and bills expenditure, Michelle, do you have anything?
No.
Attorney Pat?
Nothing.
Okay. I guess I kind of also did report of officers committee and staff, so. Yes.
I just had the one, I put the Sheriff Ethics Advisory Commission pamphlet at everyone's seat, if you would please review that.
Okay. Old business, accessory building corrections and fences. So. One thing that got brought to my attention today, by the building department is, they went over our minutes and had a issue and I guess a suggestion that they would prefer the verbiage of the fence being removed at the owner's expense to be actually adopted and put into town code as opposed to trying to be put on the building permit. I don't know what the feeling is of the board. And I think the way it came up to me was it'd be one more line on a 3-page document that nobody reads if we just throw it out there. And that at least then when they tell them why they can't do that or why that would be, then they can refer them to a point on the code as opposed to a document. That- I don't know what their response on that.
So they're saying that when it's on the building permit itself, nobody's reading that anyway.
I don't think it's on there right now, but they're saying it would just be one more thing to add to that, you know, that was their concern that they brought to me today. So,
Wasn't the point of putting it on there to leave it more open for interpretation versus concrete in code? Wasn't that the
Well-
reason that we were going that route
I
anyways?
don't like when things are open to interpretation. Then it matters who's doing the interpreting.
Weren't we not putting it in the code because it was opening the door for more issues?
no, I think when we discussed it before, where we were was kind of like, that's how it is everywhere. Like, I mean, if you build on top of an easement, you assume that risk,
Yes.
knowing that it's an easement.
And most deeds, if anybody who owns property is subject to, you know, taxes and easements and drainings and rights. of way.
And I mean, when you're applying for a building permit, you have your plat, I mean, you have to produce that there. So you're actually showing that you're building over that easement when they're actually turning that in. So I guess the question is, how will we proceed? I mean, whether we wanna go through the process of amending town code to add that. Or reaffirm with the building department that we want it on the permit. I don't know if that's the kind of what I'm asking for the direction of the board. See how we want to do it. And like I said, and if you guys want to think about it, I'm fine with that too, because it was literally, I was called down there about 1 PM today-ish, something like that. So. If it was any earlier than that, I would have passed it along, but. So. Anything?
Yes, the only comment that I would have is if I can read the application permit, where the odds of the code's gonna be read. In reality.
Right. So does everybody think they just want to think on this and come up with a suggestion for the next meeting, or how do we want to do this? Okay, any input in it?
I think add it to the agenda for next month, and let's give us, and everybody give it some thought. Cause I'd like
And we're
to,
just wanting to add it on the application as like an asterisk on the bottom, a disclaimer type of.
So, Michelle, can we do this? Can we, while we're talking about this, and we're gonna add this to the agenda for next month, can we get a copy of just the blank permit and send it out to the board just for our review, so you can see what this document entails now, and if adding one more thing to it would just be excessive for whatever reason, or if we can look at it and say, hey, all right, I understand why she wants to put it in the code as opposed to, or the building department wants to put it in the code as opposed to putting it on a permit. And then we can make that decision, because right now we're just kind of guessing, because I haven't seen the current permit, like, I haven't reviewed it in that aspect.
Yeah.
Um,
Travis makes a good point, though, if the issue is that people aren't reading it, they're less likely to read the town code than they are their own building permit application. Then I think Roseanne makes a good point, if it's just on there, we're telling you something, it's not like we have to put it in there because we're changing the law or the code or the rule. It's that we're pointing it out that that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So if we just have to point out that that's how it goes.
Right, if that's,
Just
if
put it-
I feel if that's what they're signing, you know, if they're signing and they're filling out the permit, if all we're looking for is a
Yeah, you-
disclaimer, then that's the place to put it.
Yeah.
And if it means you have to find, you know, if it makes a difference of when you print it out, making it 4 pages versus 3 pages, so maybe we need to work on spacing. So that it stays at 3 pages, you know what I mean? So it just doesn't kick one more page, so it still fits, you know, the way that it needs to fit.
Right, and I got no skin in the game either way, I mean, I'm just relaying information, so.
I think the
I'd be
disclaimer
happy
is the
with
way
it
to
either
go,
way.
I mean, if that's what we're after, we're not after, I mean, if nobody is for rewriting code to accommodate that sentence.
Clay,
It's been a minute since I've read the code, but does the code say that they have to submit the site plan or building plan or whatever with their application?
Well, so you're gonna have your plat.
Yeah.
That you have to turn in with your structure drawn on that plat where it's gonna be located. So like, if I was putting a fence up, I'd have to take my plat and I'd have to draw my fence around my property line, I'd be turning that in and it would show.
But does the town code say that that plat has to be submitted with the application?
Oh, absolutely.
And does it say that the plat, how detailed the plat has to be?
I mean, it has, like mine has to be,
no, that's,
Are we-
he makes a good point,
That's a question.
because
So that if you change anything in town code
with a big Sharpie marker.
Yeah,
with the application, you have to submit a plat showing all boundaries and easements. In the.
yeah, I don't know if it, I don't know.
And then on the form, you put in there, plats must be submitted showing all easements.
And you acknowledge that if you build on an easement, you may be forced to remove it at your expense.
Something as simple as that, so it's on them, not
So-
us, or, you know, their failure to read the form, read the town code. Can come back on them, not on the town.
right.
So would it be more, I guess, appropriate?
Once you sign your name,
Right, it doesn't matter, if you read it, you signed it.
that's right.
So would it be more appropriate though, like if we required what he's saying, that when the building commissioner reviews it and approves it, says, hey, I'm issuing your permit. However, However, there is a condition of it that says you may have to remove,
And that should,
Like-
and I think Roseanne's correct, I think that should just be,
and that would be on the permit though. I mean, it'd be like, hey, yeah, here you are approved, but see box 1A and you're gonna sign here too. And
make them sign right next to it.
I mean, and it's like, hey, I mean, you acknowledged it, you understand it, and we're moving forward.
Put it on the permit that they have to sign.
So I mean, I think we all kind of kick this around. I'd like to see the permit though. I mean, because if it is a complete. I can't see it being a mess. I know Tony's been involved in it recently, doing some stuff with it, so I would assume
Yes,
it's pretty
it's been-
organized.
It's been streamlined quite a bit,
Right, well, hopefully she created enough space for us.
yeah.
Has there been issues with
Do we
people
want
being
to,
asked to pay for, and then they're fighting it, or is this just? they
No,
just the wording is weird?
So it just came up recently, and the question was whether or not. Our intention as a board, I mean, when you looked at the code, was first off to allow people to. Like, we're not letting, like, you're not allowed to put a structure on top of an easement. But where did we lie on like a fence? And there was some discussion on that, and I mean, ultimately, I think I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but we said that, hey, a fence being on an easement is not an issue. However. If you put it on an easement and a utility company needs access to that easement, that fence is gonna be removed at the owner's cost.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we didn't wanna prohibit somebody from use of their own property. If an easement like divides their property in half and you said, hey, you can't put a fence up, like, it's kind of unrealistic too, because I mean. How many fences are up and how many fences actually have to come down in their lifetime? Like, I would assume it's pretty rare, but. I would also assume that it probably does happen. So, but it's, I mean, it just can't be like the town's responsibility to pay for it. So we're gonna continue with the accessory building corrections fences as well as this fence issue. For next meeting. New
do we
business.
want to wait until next meeting? I'm sorry, because I can make a motion.
I'd like to, let's see what it looks like.
So I still would like to see the permit.
So can we see a permit and can somebody add that to it so we can see what it looks like, so we can move on it next one?
Yeah,
Yeah, because I mean, if we're just adding it to the permit. We're not changing town code or anything else. I mean, at that point in time, we're
Right,
just
I just
going
don't
back
want
to
to
them,
come
that's
back
fine.
next month and then have to mock it up and then wait another month before we approve it, you know,
Right,
roll it out, get it moving.
Sarah,
Just as information, there have been a couple of instances in the past when something was on the permit and the person who didn't like what was on the permit asked the building department to show me that in code. Which is why some of the changes had been gone through, but that's just background. It's really connected with other parts of the accessory buildings.
at the end of the day, NIPSCO's gonna bulldoze your fence over. If they want. It's on you, so. Yeah, I don't know, it's,
I mean, I guess technically, I mean, there's a few different ways to look at it. One is it's a recorded easement that's on the property. I mean, when you purchase the property, I mean, if you didn't know it, that's kind of at the property owner's own issue. I mean. Be different if you were creating an easement after the fact, but.
let's mock it up and see it next month.
Okay.
See what it looks like.
No, I agree. I think, Michelle, we can work on a couple things like. Looking at that and try and get it out to the board actually before the meeting, so that maybe there's a couple different versions and see how it would work. That way everybody can have an opinion and see if it's feasible. If it's feasible, then we move forward. If not. I don't know. I mean, I'll let you have fun with the building department. New business, review of bonds, maintenance guarantees, letters of credit. So we did have a discussion a lot, like before we even get into any of that, so this is on that page. Michelle and I think we're both basically told that. Maybe not saying it word for word, but the conditional certificate of occupancies apparently are not an issue for this board. That they're issued by the building commissioner, they are then inspected and released by the building commissioner. So, and this is from, I believe we were informed that from our clerk treasurer,
Mhm.
and then I was reaffirmed that today by the building department. So. And I have, I guess, some references here that reaffirm that from our code. That's what I'm being told. From chapter 4, so I have some stuff that, I don't know if you want to look at it, Claire, or not, but it basically. I don't know, she printed everything out for me, I just haven't reviewed everything, because again, I got this at 1 PM today. But it was reaffirming what we were told, that this bond spreadsheet is townwide, and they're not all necessarily related to us. So I guess my question back to the building department today was basically, well, whose responsibility is it when a conditional certificate of occupancy is released and a certificate of occupancy is issued and the work was never done? That's my issue.
Which board oversees that? Would it be,
I mean, because it's none of our
It's,
concern.
it's basically just to help keep records, like internal control, but I can forward the email so you can see exactly how Jane explained it.
But so where do we go from, like, so we got brought, I mean, we brought it up because we thought it was our deal in 209 Fairchild. So 209 Fairchild it's not complete. It was released. The bond just hasn't been picked up or something, I believe. So, I mean, who does anything about that now? Like. We're like, and there's already a complaint on file prior to it being released, so like what happens?
the building department is supervised by the council?
So is this just a question we like have?
It'd have to be us, I think, I guess.
I mean, and that's fine, I just want to direct that person because I'm tired of hearing from them. Yeah,
Did you ever go find it?
Well, I live right there.
because I mean,
Yeah, no, it's not done.
I mean, if I lived next door, I guess I'd be upset too though, so.
Everybody else said you do it.
Anybody else see anything that actually applies to us on this that we need to address though? So the only thing I can say personally, because this was also brought up several times to Michelle and I, is in reference to the $7,000 treasurer's check for R&D developers that I tried to reach out for them to pick it up. And haven't got a response. I guess October 1st, it's gotta be sent downstate. So
Yeah, if
by
it's
that
not
day-
claimed, it gets sent downstate to unclaimed.
Yeah. So
Does,
I guess like, this is like a bank thing, like they're saying, hey, you can't hold it anymore.
Okay.
So. But I reached out and I'll continue to try and reach out. So.
can any representative note my conflict of interest, please? Can any representative of R&B developers claim that check?
I mean, it says Tom Lightfoot, but it also says R&B developers on the contact.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's an LLC or
It does say LLC on
It's an
it.
LLC. Can any officer of the LLC,
where does it say LLC?
On the third line.
R&B developers of Northwest Indiana LLC?
Okay, on mine, it just says R&D developers, but.
And the contact information. the next
Oh, I
slide.
see. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I mean, if someone is a member besides Mr. Lightfoot, I suspect that they could.
Outstanding. Fair enough. Okay,
Is it water?
I'll,
Is she still?
I'll attempt to reach out in other means.
So if they're my check.
Okay, fair enough. Good to the order and any other business. Admin,
I did.
I'm here on behalf of Village Land Company, Tom Bland and Steve Slater. We have adjacent properties in Burns Harbor at the corner of Burns Boulevard and along Route 20 going west. We are not here for an approval or a plan review or anything like that. And just, we're doing something a little different than the norm there, and the realtor suggested it would be good to get the town's input on it prior to going further with our project. So we have there a piece of property between all three owners that's approximately 5 acres, a little bit more, but about 5 acres. As some of you know, there have been plans in the past to develop that commercially. And one of the things that each of us as owners recognizes that while each of us has some strengths with our properties, then we also each have a few drawbacks to our properties. So it is recognized by a few other people who consulted with it. Together, we can overcome some of the quirks that go with it. And one of those being that we have two different zoning parcels that come against each other there. It is on RC1 and downtown district. So the layout that you have, like I said, it's just a sketch. It is not intended that we are going to market it as this exact layout. This is really just to give a prospective buyer an idea of the possibilities that could be done, or I'll say one of the possibilities that could be done within town zoning code as it is now. There are represented there, I believe, 5 buildings. The ones on Route 20 that all face Route 20 are all in downtown district. The 2 that face Burns Boulevard are in an RC1. As it lays right now, most of those are on separate lots, and they could be subdivided if somebody wanted to do an owned property as opposed to leasing it from a developer. The 2 that are not on their own lot, those lots could be combined and then redivided. There'd be enough room on those. Depending on the end user, the buildings that are on there would fit the zoning. But we did not want to give too many details because we don't want to tell them this is what you have to do. This is just a representation of that. There are a couple of uses that are possible that would be special exceptions, and there is some historic reference or record already of some of the things that have been done with that similarly. Some of the permitted uses for those that are in RC1 would include an assisted living, a live-work building, bed and breakfast, a box building, small, which is up to 10,000 square feet, a corner store, a daycare, and a preschool. Things that are not exactly, that those are more commercial as opposed to residential use. Residential use that is permitted there would be a freestanding house, a group dwelling, mansion, apartment, townhouse, twin home, or a 2-flat. Special exceptions for that area would include a mixed-use block building, an inn, a corner office, a medium box, which is 10,000 square feet to 35,000 square feet, and a restaurant. Within the downtown district, permitted uses would include an assisted living, live-work building, mixed-use block building, a bed and breakfast, an inn, an office building, bar or tavern, Small and medium box, those are, as I said earlier, 10,000 and then 10,000 to 35,000 square feet. A restaurant, indoor recreation, a clinic, a funeral home, daycare, preschool, and fuel or convenience. Other permitted uses which are more residential in their character, but which is not really the customer we're proceeding or targeting, are group dwellings, mansion apartments, and townhomes, and a special exception would be a commercial strip mall. The larger the buildings that face Route 20, those could be up to 3-story. We're presenting it in the sketch as just showing the option for a 2nd story or a 1-story building, just so that people understand that those are options. If someone wanted to go to 3 stories, of course, there would be some other things they have to do, including a different handicap accessibility. They would need an elevator and some things like that. So those are other things, but we didn't want to present those as the main focus of our design. Those could be tilt-up buildings, and that's what why we went with a couple different facade standards or styles, so that people would get the sense that you don't have to have just this or just that. You have options there. The ones that are within the village in Burns Harbor, those are drawn, so they do meet architectural review standards there, so that we already gave someone the taste for that this is something, a product that has to go through review with that development as in addition to the town. We have sent this letter to the building commissioner, the fire department, the sanitation commissioner, as well as the planning commission, the building department secretary, and the plan commission secretary. We did get a response back from Commissioner Arnie, and it was a favorable response to what's there so far, and I could read it to you if you want to hear that. But as he mentioned there, there's things, of course, we'll have to look at, but it was not a plan review. So those are some of the things we have. I guess at this point, that's the background information. I did the uses that were listed just from our own table 5.2, the zoning form and function table as it exists now. And also went through and reviewed what the definitions are, because I realized that definitions drive some interpretation. So that's another thing that we've reviewed. And just kind of now at this point, I just would like some input from you, concerns, questions, things you think we should keep in mind. Just to start that, I'll say that Fire Chief Arnie said that, of course, we'll have to designate the fire access lanes, which would depend on the use of the building. And as the sanitation commissioner and MS4, there are some things that will have to be addressed there, but that would also be driven by the final plan that comes through. So. Any thoughts, questions, concerns at this point?
Do you just have this like one entrance to get to all of this, or are you thinking multiple turn-ins from Route 20?
No, we are actually setting up the agreement so that the person that would develop this, that they have the option of using or having an easement for the access that goes into the master link property. There's also some already designated easements or access points, ingress and egress within on the other streets. It is generally true that the state has to provide you egress to your property, but in that particular area, it would be a safety concern and would probably have more pushback from the state on getting another cut on the highway. So that's one of the reasons that having the access, ingress and egress at the master link driveway we thought was a benefit.
Okay.
There could actually, if you note on that plan, there are already shown, I believe, 3, including the one through master link, Yeah, I guess it doesn't actually show that that connects on the sketch, does it? We just knew that, sorry. And
No,
then
I
there's
see what you're talking about.
one on Burns Boulevard in the middle, and then there's also one on Weaver Way.
Okay.
I was gonna raise my hand, but I guess I don't have to do that.
You can if you just want to do it. Here.
I think that entrance to Master Link is gonna be a very important part of this. Just knowing what kind of traffic concern there is there at Burns Boulevard, US Highway 20. I think adding a potential volume of traffic to it, I think the Master Link entrance and exit is safety wise, it would be a big plus if that was a part of it. Cause the only other alternative, I don't know if you make that turn with like semis and stuff like that coming onto Burns Boulevard and then trying to service this otherwise either, but otherwise, I think you would almost have to try and get the state to put in a traffic light at Burns Boulevard. And I think it would be something to look at if you couldn't secure that entrance at Master Link.
The state wouldn't put another light that close to 149.
You don't think so? Like Route 6, when you're in Portage, like they have, I mean, there's traffic lights. Like when you go from
I just don't see that.
six in Willow Creek and then to Meyer and then. Like they're like.
Is
One of them right
Route
around.
6 a designated heavy haul?
I guess, I think.
All I'm saying, like, I can't say that, I mean, maybe Attorney Patton is correct, I just don't know if
And
that's
they
ever
would
been
not
sought or not.
take, you know, any legal statute or anything like that, just looking at it, you've already got a light there to get into the pilot where the McDonald's is, and then a light at 149, just another one at Burns, and then the next one is there's not a light at Salt Creek, is there, but I know.
Samuelson's.
Jameson's the next one.
Sir, what's your timeline just to list the property
Soon.
rapidly?
Rapidly.
I mean,
No, it's not yesterday, we have not done that.
I don't think there's a lot here that like. It's just. There's not too much to say. Yeah.
Just think,
I don't think I see anything that's like, oh my God, there's no way that this could be either reconfigured or, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I mean,
Yeah.
as opposed to fields of grass.
Well, traffic, I think, is the only concern here.
So Sarah, are you just seeking kind of input, because what's the zoning? You don't need to have the 3 zones or variance.
no, what is drawn here is drawn under the
Current,
current
yeah.
zoning districts and the code. It's not designating any specific uses, that's why I gave you that list. There's a lot of options within what we have now. If someone would look at this and they would prefer to do a PUD, so it was all zoned the same, that would be an option under town code, but that would be a whole other process, you know. Which may be preferable to trying to get the zoning changed on the RC one.
And I think that would. And I guess if you knew that that's what it required, that would be one thing. I would say, because otherwise it'd be hard to, I think, establish that with having 3 separate property owners.
We have a joint venture agreement.
Oh, okay,
So
I just didn't
it will
know, I
be-
was just like looking at it as something like, I don't know what happens if somebody backs out in the middle of it and then.
That's what part of the structure we have established. So I guess that's one thing I should say, when we have all the same realtor, it will be marketed all as one piece. And we have a joint venture agreement to put it out there, so it's not like what you would have been afraid of, that somebody wants to do something and then everybody backs out. So as far as Roseanne's comment about traffic, as you know, or can note, that we tried to make it so that you can go around all sides of all buildings. So there is fire access or emergency access on all sides. We've also done it so that, you know, you could get in and out with the truck A semi may be a little more difficult, but I mean, depends on your driver, but the size of trucks that we anticipate might be servicing this kind of radius and things we feel would be close. But again, we didn't want to pigeonhole anyone with, well, this is what, exactly what we can promise.
Yeah,
here.
deliveries and such would be a little concerning on how, if you can't really come in from Burns or Weaver with a truck.
But I think,
They do it all.
I think if they made this entrance wide enough, no matter what, like, maybe this entrance would have to be 3 lanes wide on Burns Boulevard, like, when you make that left. I think you could turn a semi there, so I mean, I don't think it's not doable, I just think that it's a huge value if that entrance.
Oh, yeah, from the other.
If that entrance from Masterlink is included, I think it
Yeah.
relieves so many problems.
Like Gordon's. You see the little short trailers.
Because other than that, I enjoy it, I think that's just my opinion though.
When do you start?
What do you think, everybody?
I agree. Absolutely.
Well,
I mean, obviously, if I think it's great if everything meets code and all that good stuff and like, but I also get that like it's kind of preliminary, we don't know what
Mhm.
a potential buyer would actually want to put there.
Right.
But
We're
I
trying
think
to
this
put-
concept is appealing to its surrounding neighbors, and I think it would probably go over a lot better than just a huge building out there that nobody wants to look at.
Well, that's one of the things we're trying to do, that we're trying to check off people's concerns before it goes to market, because that's actually it's easier for a buyer if you feel like you know that something has gone, at least for input to the town, as opposed to, well, the realtor said you can do this and there's really no backing. So. All right. If anybody has any other questions or concerns that come up, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other business?
Yes, I do. We had talked about before, needing a little help with this container ordinance. About one district, Cleveland Cliffs. I don't know how you're gonna expect your building commissioner to even think about patrolling it. If there would be some way to go in, talk to them, like we talked about before, just get a flat deal. Nobody can even see in there. You know, nobody knows. Just
Nobody can see the one at the park either. Just saying.
don't go there.
Do we know who we would even talk to there at Cleveland Cliffs?
Somebody's talked to somebody in there. You know. We'd have to find out. Somebody on the town council should know who to talk to in there.
Jack was the one talking to him last.
We know who to talk to.
Mhm. And see if they'd be willing to a flat rate and let it go, because I don't see how your building commissioner, I mean, you could be in there every day checking out.
Is there a fine if they have it there and they're not supposed to?
What's that?
Is there a fine if they have it there and they're not supposed to?
I mean, what are they allowed? One? Now,
They're allowed one per business. And keep in mind that there are an abundance of contractors coming and going from that facility.
okay.
That's how,
You guys, it's your
I-
building
that's
commissioner.
all I'm saying, well, it's our interim building commissioner.
Well,
So
it's
that's,
still, you're gonna be tying him up big time.
I'm not saying that that's how I want it, I'm just saying that it's not, just for clarification, it's not one per property, it's one per business. So I just didn't want there to be a misconception that they're only allowed to have one shipping container on that whole piece of property. So I would just a
No, I
little
just
off
asked if
there.
they exceed it, then is there a fine that they have to pay if they exceed the amount that they're allowed to have?
Yeah, there's gotta be, I mean, for not obtaining a permit.
Yeah.
There's. That's where we go, but yeah, absolutely. I think the hardest part with it is, and this is, I think where he's coming from. For one, there's gonna be shipping containers in locations down there that are just flat out unsafe to go and try and inspect. I mean, it's in the middle of steel mill, that there's some areas that we probably shouldn't be going in, nor it's gonna be difficult to demand access to. Some of the areas not a problem, like absolutely not a problem. I mean, some of the people are obviously coming in for the permits and what have you. But the issue is just, for one, is accessibility, and for two, even if you do find a container. I guess the question is if you say there's no permit on this container, what do you do with it if Cleveland Cliffs says, well, we don't own the container? Do we find the property owner, or do we find, I mean, because we have no way to prove ownership. Like I think that's the hardest part with it, because it's not always stamped on the side of it that says, hey, this belongs to so-and-so. So it creates that issue. I mean, we probably didn't foresee that all the way, but I mean, that's something that I think has to be considered, and I think that's why part of this is a good question about. I mean, I think at one point it was, well, do we take that property and just potentially figure out what would be a fair flat rate to just allow those containers up there, to avoid all the cost and the time and effort we're gonna take to inspect them. And actually try to enforce anything up there. But I think that was the concern. It wasn't like saying, hey, you can just do whatever you want. It was just gonna be, hey, how do we do this and make it feasible for both parties?
Right, but I guess my question would be then, what if they say, well, okay, yeah. And then they still have all their containers and we don't go there and check them and we don't find them, and then it's just one more exception that to the rule that benefits somebody other than the town of Burns Harbor.
I don't know, I don't have an answer for that. I mean, like, it's,
So I guess from the town's perspective, what's our interest in inspection?
What do you mean, what's our interest?
What's our interest? What's the town's
To not
interest?
have any containers on any.
I maybe,
Or not to
I might
exceed.
disagree with that, but it'd probably be for emergency purposes, safety, stuff like that. It's not so much the container in a special district per se, where the count, or that they wouldn't maybe provide.
So.
Say the count, if it's the interest in, say, revenue, or maybe that's one of them. I don't think they would have the ill interest of not having the onus to say, hey, I've got X number of containers on the property, owned by X, Y, and Z, whomever it may be. And here's, what it costs to have those. But I think, say from the town's perspective, I think the safety aspect is a big piece, because not
If
necessarily
there's
the inspection.
containers there that we can't inspect
Correct.
the integrity and safety of, then how are we worried
That's-
about the safety?
Which that would be in their interest to have those in good working order, no difference than a contractor trailer at their own buildings, right?
I think a couple of things that he said, I think you gotta look at it a few different ways. One, when he was talking about safety, like, so for instance, the back of the pilot, the containers that were there, I mean, that is limiting access for fire personnel if there's actually a fire at that business. So it's gonna be like, well, I mean, we can't potentially protect that building from certain sides because the shipping containers are limiting our access. And I believe the last I heard that those things were supposed to be, I don't know if they changed their mind, but they were supposed to be being relocated to the north end of the parking lot out of the way. But I could be wrong. I mean, maybe things have changed. I heard that they were talking about doing something else. But I think that's part of it. Now, I know what you're saying about, like, well, I mean, the safety issue. I mean, if we can't inspect them, I think it's two different ways. You have to look at it though. What is our interest in inspecting them at putting one of our employees at risk to inspect them? I guess that's something for the town to weigh. I mean, is it worth like potentially sending an employee into an environment that just to put a sticker on the side of it to make sure that it's painted properly and in an environment where nobody can see it. I guess that's my question. I mean, and if we need to revisit the ordinance, then that's what we need to do. If it's just completely not working, I don't know. I mean, but that's something that needs to be figured out. Cause I don't know, like, I don't sit in BZA, but I mean, obviously from what I hear that there's plenty of shipping container topics going on at BZA. Would that be fair that like that's probably the abundance of your workload right now?
Get to review that at all.
We can handle all the rest of it. I don't think there's a problem there. But just. We could meet every night going into Cleveland Cliffs in there, you know.
Yeah, and I understand where you're coming from, but I also understand where if we just give them a blanket, okay, how's that fair to the rest of the town, just because
But
they're.
and it's not just that, it's just, one more exception to the rule for Cleveland Cliffs. There has to be something, and I get what you're saying, that if there's some kind of fee that they need to pay to have it there, then that's what they do, that's what they need to do, but it shouldn't be an exception, they shouldn't get an exception.
I think the intention was to say, hey, you're gonna have an annual fee of X amount of dollars. In lieu of us
Right,
actually
and
coming
all
out and
I'm
doing the
saying is,
inspections.
and we need to make sure that we have a plan, that if they say, okay, we'll give you $1. Like, what is, or what are we taking to them and asking them for? Is there an idea? I mean, you don't wanna go and start a conversation and then, well, hold on, cause I have to figure out the rest of the conversation.
Ultimately, we don't have the ability, I don't think this board has the ability to, like. I mean, I guess we could write code for that, but, I mean, I think if we were varying from anything that's set, I think it'd be up to the town council to make those, because I don't think we have the authority to change a fee specifically for that nature. I think that would be something.
You could make that recommendation to the town council, but.
Right. So like nothing would just be like rubber stamp and sent. I mean, I think the first question is getting in contact with them and getting a rough idea. How many containers are on the property? I mean, and I don't understand that it's not gonna be an exact number, because for one, you gotta understand that they're coming and going on a daily basis, so the count's gonna be questionable. But I mean, is it 500? Is it 1,000? Nobody knows. So I think that's the first thing, because before you even talk dollar or trying to figure out how to handle it, how many are there? So.
And they might not even know.
Right.
Let's just face it, if you've worked in there very much, there's places back in there. They don't know what's there.
So I would, in reference to your question, I think I would be in favor of offering anything without having more information. I think that would be, but I mean, if we want to start the discussion, I think we might potentially have to reach out to somebody, maybe have somebody come to this meeting, say, hey, this is our issue, and we'd like to start a dialogue with it. So.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Anybody else? Well, entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion, or a second?
I'll second.
Sure, a second, any discussion? Roll call, Michelle.
Roseanne Bozak,
Yes.
Travis Dunlap,
Yes.
Paul Migalorni,
Yes.
Nick Loving,
Yes.
Aaron Addock,
Yes.
Bernie Paprad,
Yes.
Jeremy McCartan.
Yes.